You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Welcome back to the Horse HealthCast. I'm Ashley LeCompte-Lazich, head of R&D for SmartPak.
And I'm Jenna Bosgarden, manager of digital marketing for SmartPak. And today we are doing our very last segment of the Beat the Heat series.
Smart solutions, trusted voices. Your source for equine health and wellness. This is Horse HealthCast by SmartPak. The discussions in this podcast are intended for educational and informational purposes and are not intended as veterinary advice. You should always consult with a licensed veterinarian or qualified equine health professional before making changes to your horse's diet or care plan. Hosts and guests cannot guarantee the reliability, accuracy, or completeness of the information shared, and as such, these discussions are not a substitute for veterinary or professional guidance, and any actions you take are at your own risk.
Woohoo! So far we've gone over UV safety, health-related heat concerns, and the importance of electrolytes. And for our last bit, we are going to talk about a very, very important one that is timely since we are heading into August. When is it too hot to ride?
Okay, so I feel like every rider asks themselves this question every summer for the entirety of their riding career, but like, when is it too hot to ride? And I think we always ask that question kind of like, when do I blanket my horse? Because there's not really a specific answer to it.
No, there's not. And there's a lot of factors that go into it too, right? So, okay, so first let's talk about the fact, I think a couple episodes ago, we talked about a lot about evaporative cooling, right? And how when humidity gets too high, evaporation requires like your body to be wet. So then it has to go in, that moisture evaporates into the air. If the air is already saturated with water, i.e. humidity, that evaporative cooling is not going to do much. So it's not just heat we're thinking about, it's heat combined with humidity, air movement, sun exposure. So there's a lot of pieces and parts in this. If it's very, very hot, but your horse is in a covered, like a little covered pergola with a fan on them, they're out of the sun and it's really dry outside, they're probably going to do a lot better than a horse in super hot climate that's very humid, standing roasting in the sun. So there are so many different aspects of this that you need to consider besides just the heat.
Yeah, and this might be wives' tale. What do you think? Sure. Does the color of your horse impact how hot they're going to feel as well? Like I always had a dark bay gelding and I always worried that he was hotter than every other, gray, palomino, and chestnut out there. Is that real or was that just in my head?
I mean, I guess if you think about the fact that like white deflects light and black absorbs it, like I would imagine that to be true. It is with like any other type of surface, like a car or a house. So I mean, scientifically, I couldn't tell you, but I think logically that makes sense, right? A lighter colored horse is going to be deflecting that. But we hope that your light colored horse is probably standing inside during the day and being turned out at night or has a UV fly sheet on for sure.
Yeah, that is not to say your flea bitten gray should also be kept in hot heat and high humidity. But I just remember with my dark gelding, I was always like, man, are you worse off than everybody else? And
hot to the touch,
in heat and humidity, so I might have just been projecting some of that onto him. But
I mean, I think it's a logical thing to think. I mean, it would be that way for, like I said, a car or a building or even like the substrate that the ground, like asphalt, is going to get a lot hotter than grass because it's black. So yeah, I think that probably has some validity to it. We'll check after the pod. When we're done taping, we'll fact check that. But I think that it probably tracks. It sounds like it tracks to me.
I mean, I appreciate you just, validating my logic. So thank you for that.
Of course.
And other than just, wives' tales and gut feelings and things like that, there's also, it's the temperature humidity index, the THI, right? And that's kind of where we base things off of.
Yep. So again, because it's not just heat that we're focused on, it's also the humidity. There is like a little equation where you take in Fahrenheit, the important caveat, you take the heat in Fahrenheit plus the humidity and you add it together. And then there's kind of brackets that you generally would fit into under 130. So let's say, it's 60% humidity and 70%, 70 degrees outside, you're good, right? Under 130, most horses are going to tolerate this really well. So at 150, that would be 80 degrees and 60% humidity. I'm 70% humidity. I'm very bad. I'm mathing off the top of my head here. So I'm just riffing along here. But so if you add those two things together and they're between 130 and 150, still the safe zone, but you're going to want to pay a little bit more attention to your horse, how they're recovering, and really keep your eye on them and how they're handling that work and then modify if necessary. Over 150, that's where you're going to start getting into that risk area for heat stroke and for undesirable after effects. So you really want to make sure that you're laser focused in on what you're doing if it's over 150 and you're not, putting your horse into a very strenuous situation.
Yeah, I mean, all that definitely makes sense. And I know, I think we said it before, like, we're horse girls, we're not math girls. So
right.
I'm with you.
Sorry, I'm sure
equation and cried. It's okay. You're not alone. But like most of us have a phone in our back pocket, throw the numbers into that. Most of us have a weather app on our phone. You can usually find those numbers there. So like using the resources.
I'm going to do it right now. Let's see what it is today.
Oh, hey. Yeah. Okay. Let's do that both because
So it is. Oh, it's really cool here today. So terrible time to do it. But all right. So it is 45% humidity and 73 degrees, this is a beautiful day. I better get out there and go ride. Nice. Okay, so 118. Like, we're super safe today. Actually, I bet I can feel the wind in my hair as I go. It is lovely outside. So this would be a great day. But suppose I'm going to keep the calculator
I'm
out.
at 82 degrees with 60% humidity, so I'm hitting right around 140.
Okay, so you're approaching that pay attention. The pay attention era. So even though it's not insanely hot outside, that humidity is not helping. So this is a time where you're going to want to monitor how long it takes your horse to recover with his you're measuring breaths and what his respiratory rate is. And just keep an eye on them. Are they excessively sweating? Are they taking a longer time to recover? And make sure that if you're in that 130 to 150 zone that you're really paying attention. If you're above 150, obviously there's going to be more caveats that I'm sure are built into, talking more in depth throughout the podcast today. But those are just the general rules of them.
Yeah. And going back to kind of general knowledge, we covered this in a couple of our previous episodes in this Beat the Heat series. But if you know that your temperature heat index is hitting higher, and even if you're going to go out for a ride or not, just making sure that your horse has the things we've talked about before, access to clean, fresh water at all times. If they need some kind of electrolyte, whether it's a daily support or, an ad hoc, paste kind of thing. Do they have a mineral block? Do they have a salt block?
Right.
Just making sure that they have the things. You mentioned it before, shade, a cool fan, something to protect them from the exposure and things like that. So even we can't control the weather, Jackie, but we can.
Wish we could.
We can make sure that they at least have what they need to help within that. And also worth noting, we talk about this from your horse's perspective a lot, make sure your horse is cooling out correctly, make sure that the temperature works great for your horse, but you're an athlete too. And I feel like a lot of people strange away when we tell them this, but we're athletes too. So taking into account that you also want to be able to breathe and perform well and not recover strenuously. So it's for your horse, yes. And it's also for you because you're working as a team and you're both working pretty hard. So if you feel bad, my horse needs to work, he probably doesn't. And you probably deserve, a day of breathing easier too. So just my soapbox for the day to keep in mind.
No, I think that's fair. I like that. I never refer to myself as an athlete, but again,
I know I feel like I fight you on this every time, but you are also an athlete.
Thank you, Jenna. I appreciate it. Yeah. So like I said, there's a lot of factors. So we'll keep that under 130 to 150 and 150 and above as the general categories of when to pay attention and what to consider, right? But then there are, obviously this is very nuanced and people are different and horses are different. So let's kind of talk through what some of those differences might be and what types of implications and how they might apply themselves to a horse's workout regimen. So the first thing that you're going to consider is your horse's fitness level, right? So a horse that is training for a 5-star event is going to be in a very different situation than a horse who is a weekend warrior and maybe goes on a trail ride twice a week. So your horse's fitness level, and especially fitness in heat. So if you're showing and training all summer, those horses are going to be able to withstand, harsher conditions than the horses that are used to having a nice cushy life, right? So it's the same story as it would be with a human. If you're training for a marathon in the middle of the summer, you're going to have a much better chance at withstanding some of those harsh conditions than someone who's sitting in air conditioning all summer long. So the horse's fitness level certainly has quite a bit to do with how they're going to handle it. Their age, right? If you have a nice young spry horse, they're going to bounce back a little bit faster than your 30-year-old pal who's been living out on the pasture, not doing much, right? So their fitness level, their age, their body condition. We talked, I can't remember if it was last pod or two episodes ago about how one of the best things that you can do for your horse is keeping them at a reasonable body condition. And this is one, to help prevent injury and to make sure that they have nice longevity, but also so that they're not lugging an extra 100, 200, however many 100 pounds around, because the more that they have have to do, the more impact on their joints, the harder it is for their, circulatory system and their respiratory system to have to lug that weight around. So keeping your horse at a reasonable body condition score also can help. So obviously overweight horses are going to have a harder time in the summer. There's just no way around that.
We love
So
and
horses,
grocery, but it comes with its own level.
Right? You know what's so funny?
Hmm.
Andy, as we like to call him, very well groceried. He's a Belgian cross, right? So he's just a thick dude.
What's gonna happen?
I was doing a group lesson, I don't know, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and it was warm here. And in the group lesson was my 20-year-old Belgian cross and two off-track thoroughbreds, one of which I would say is slightly underweight.
Okay.
And the other one is like a very ideal 5.5 body condition score. So two off-track thoroughbreds and that are 6 and 7, I think. And then my 20-year-old built, right? They were built for this. And then my Andrew. And Andy was the only one not huffing and puffing. So like fitness matters because your girl likes to go for some
good conditioning right there.
That's right. So, I mean, your conditioning really matters. It really does. If you have a horse that is conditioned for work and, we're in the middle of our season, we do a lot of conditioning gallops and a lot of trot sets and we do them in the heat, obviously slowly. I don't just toss him out there in the beginning of the summer, but they will acclimate. So that is really important too. And then of course their health status. Like if your horse has Cushing's and has like retained his winter coat, like clip him, help him out, right? So there are going to be various health conditions that you really want to make sure you're working with your vet. I can't speak about your horse. I can only speak about my horses, but in general, those are going to be kind of the buckets of things that may change that. And then of course it is your ride. So your horse has various things in their own life that is going to change how they withstand it. But then you also have a little control over that, right? So the duration of your ride, like if it's I'd say that we had that 1 week that was like 95 degrees. I just talked about this group lesson. We were not drilling. We were actually working on center lines. Like all we did was trot up center line, halt, trot away. Next person, come down. So like that was all we do. I often will focus on like at the walk. I will focus on going from my stretchy walk to a collected walk or working on lateral movement and a shoulder in here so like focusing on some of the finer movements for a shorter amount of time. So cut your rides a little bit short.
There's a lot you can accomplish at the walk.
Actually, obviously I'm only speaking from an eventing perspective here because I live in my like little bubble. From a dressage viewpoint, I think that like people lose more points at the walk than any other gait because it's like the forgotten gait. Like everyone assumes like I can walk, but like it's hard. Walking well is hard.
Especially in between all the other things.
Yes, exactly. So I do a lot of work at the walk, a little bit of trot, and I cut my rides really short. This is not the time to be working on endurance. Like that's not this is our finesse. These are our days where we work to finesse the little details out. So duration, short. Intensity, also short. I'm walking. I'm doing a little bit of lateral movement. I'm not asking them to stay in a frame the whole time. I'm doing a lot of long and low work, encouraging them to walk over their back. You could also do groundwork. You could literally have a dressage whip in your hand and be working on, yielding to pressure. Like there's so many things that you can do besides just letting your horse sit in the paddock because you don't want to be cruel or subject them to work in the heat, but you can totally keep it easy, still keep them learning, still keep them engaged, and make sure that they're safe while you're doing it. And then, of course, like your location. Right now, inside of my barn is like 100 degrees. It is hot. Maybe not today. Today is really nice. But in general, this summer, the indoor has been really hot. And I've learned that if I wait until like 7 o'clock at night to ride, the way our outdoor arena is set up, there's like this huge wall of trees. And by that time, even though the sun has not set, it's still light outside. The outdoor is fully shaded. So if I ride at like 7, it's shady. It's a little cooler and I'm getting a lot of nice airflow through there. So picking where you're riding, the timing of your riding, the duration of your riding, the intensity, those are all little knobs and levers that you can twist and pull if and when you fall into that 30 to 50 or even 150 and above to try to, modulate that ride or groundwork, whatever it is that you're doing to make sure your horse is safe.
Yeah. And I think all of that is so good to keep in mind. And it's a lot, right? Like it's not an insignificant list of things that you can, keep in mind and kind of work around. But it comes back to what you and I say probably every episode. We should probably have some kind of like swear jar for how often we say this, but know your horse. So like you said with your lessons, I think it's so interesting. Like your 20-year-old draft cross was doing great and the younger off-track thoroughbreds as well were, getting a little bit hotter and sweatier as it went on faster. And it's not that they weren't, athletic and capable horses, just that Andy so well at this point and where he needs the most support, that the amount of conditioning you do to make sure that he is at a point like that is not insignificant. And so it's just a lot of knowing your horse and knowing what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And a lot of that for anybody out there who's like, well, I haven't had my half draft for, 10 years. What am I supposed to do?
Right.
You learn as you go. You figure it out as you keep trying and asking questions and working with your vet and working with your trainer. And every year it's going to be a little bit different and maybe a little bit better.
Yep, absolutely. So you pay attention and you guess and check. And we should talk about the things you're paying attention to, right? So we're saying keep an eye on your horse, study them, see how they react. Well, what does that look like? Okay, it's hot out. I went for a ride. What am I looking for? Is my horse in danger? So the first thing I'm going to look for is like excessive sweating. So we had a whole episode on anhidrosis and non-sweaters, and obviously that's not good. We want your horse to sweat, but we also want to keep an eye out for like excessive sweating. If your horse is now not lather, because we know that latherin is a protein that is there by design, but if your horse is like sweating buckets over every square inch of their body, that's like obviously the body's way of saying like, I'm super hot and I am making as much sweat as I humanly can to try to encourage this evaporative cooling and get my body temperature down immediately. So pay attention to how much they're sweating. If you hop off from a ride and they are just absolutely covered head to toe, that was an intense ride, right? Obviously under your saddle pad, around where they had their bridle on, maybe a little bit of foam in between their butt cheeks, totally normal. But if it is like dripping off of them, something to consider. So pay attention to how much sweat is coming off of them. The other one is going to be an elevated respiratory rate. So if it's over 40 breaths per minute, pay attention to that. So I actually do this when I'm doing like my trot sets. I trot for like 4 minutes, walk for 1. And while I'm walking or when I stop, I'm paying attention to the respiratory and I'm actually like logging this. I use like a little app and I log everything so that I can pay attention to exactly how long it's taking him to recover. Hopefully over time, as their fitness is getting better, they recover faster and faster. So if they are unable to recover faster, you might know that the weather's kind of working against them. So something to consider there too. And then high heart rate, a rectal temperature of, I think it's 102.5 at rest. So if they're just chilling and their temperature is 102. Well, first of all, that's alarmingly high. So like I would be calling my vet anyway, but like that's a problem, right? Lethargy, stumbling, like something that think about when you get heat stress and you come inside and like you've been like out at the barn doing whatever and you come inside and you're like, oh my God, I'm like a little bit dizzy. I need to sit down. So like these are the same things you'd be looking at your horse. If they're kind of lethargic, a little depressed, they're stumbling around, something to be concerned about. So these are the warning signs that like it was a little too much.
Yeah. And I think for most horses and riders, you're probably not going to get to that kind of point. Like this isn't like just as a reminder, you going out and having a lesson when it's 80 degrees and there's a breeze, you're probably fine. This is for the extremes. You weren't sure, your horse worked a lot harder than you thought they were. Like these are just the warning signs from when it's really gone farther than you've expected it to. This is not this could happen at any given time. So just keeping that in mind. But these are the things that you just need to know. So that way, if they do occur, something clicks in the back of your brain to be like, oh, this might be a sign of heat stress.
Right.
So
exactly.
It's a good to have information, not you need to be watching for this every second of the day in the summer because this is going to happen kind of thing.
100%. So like, obviously, the things that you'd look for after any ride, like your horse breathing heavily, or like these are things that you just keep a mental checklist of. And if you're in a lesson, your trainer is going to, pay attention to these things and keep a mental checklist too. So before you go out on your ride, see what the index is, add your humidity, add your temperature in Fahrenheit. And if you're in that above 130 to 150 or 150 and above, just be mindful of what you're doing. If it's 150 or above, like reconsider your ride. If you don't have to, maybe give them a day off or do some groundwork or go for a hand graze, just go hang out with them or do some walking exercises like I do. And if it's 130 to 150, just be paying attention to some of those warning signs.
Absolutely. And like you said earlier too, with how you manage your riding time, like there's a bunch of other things we can do as riders and stewards of good horse health to just help make sure that we are getting the most out of the time that we have to ride and the tempers that we have to ride in. So you said it all. You ride at 7 p.m. because that's when your arena is fully shaded.
Yeah. It's also when my kid goes to sleep. So it's like kind of a tough trade-off there. Yeah. Yep. So
I know we have plenty of SmartPackers who they come in to work with their breeches on and then they'll change and, get into it. It's like, it's sometimes it's early morning, sometimes it's late in the evening, but adjusting your time from when it's going to be the most beneficial. Nobody wants to ride at noon on a 90-degree day anyway. So
Brutal. Yeah.
just adding that, a little earlier or a little later if you can swing it with your schedule. And you said it
no,
too.
I totally agree.
Yeah. And you said it too with adjusting your expectations. Like some days you go out and you're like, guess what we're doing? We are going out cross country schooling today. We are having a lesson with our, our favorite trainer over fences, and it's so hot and it's a bummer. And you do have to reevaluate. Like nobody wants to have to, but for the safety of the horse, when it truly is that hot, adjusting your expectations doesn't mean canceling everything, but maybe instead of riding for an hour, it's a half an hour, 20 minutes. Maybe instead of doing a full course, you're just working on rollbacks or something that's a very specific thing. You can kind of tweak a little bit a couple of times and call it. And like you said, ground work, flat work, walking work, just a lot of options.
You can change it. You can change up everything. So at the last show that I was at, it's been like a hot summer here. So the last show I was at, I think I warmed up a little bit too long for one of my tests. And then by the time I got in, like I could feel he was tired.
Oh no.
And afterward, I'm chatting with Meredith and I'm like, I feel like I kind of lost him. I maybe overdid it in warm up. And then like he peaked before we got into the ring, whatever. And I was like, I haven't really been doing a lot of like endurance rides. Like I have been, I unless it's in a lesson, right? When I'm just riding by myself, it's been so hot that like my objective has been ask for something. If he gives it to me and I have no notes, we're done. Like, let's be done. Like if I ask you to do X, Y, and Z for 15 minutes and you're right there with me and you're responsive on the aid and you're following you're doing exactly what I ask you to, I'm not going to drill. Like why bother? It's 100 degrees outside and this is gross and neither of us want to be here. So if you're going to be obedient and a good boy, like I'll be done. And that kind of came back to bite me a little bit just because I think he got tired. But this was in dressage. He never gets tired on cross country, oddly enough. But in the dressage ring, he's like, oh, my aching bones. He just didn't want to hold his neck up anymore. He was just a tired boy. So, but yeah, like adjusting your rides to make sure that you're, trust me when I say there's enough to work on that is not going out and drilling. Like I mentioned, center lines.
Mm-hmm.
Center lines, easy peasy. Straightness. Yep. Straightness is a tough one. Work on your straightness. Make sure that those haunches are right in line with those shoulders.
Oh God. Good luck to everybody with that. And if you're not sure, if you're like, wow, I don't know what tiny thing I could work on, ask your trainer if they've got a list.
That's right. That's right.
It'll hurt your feelings maybe, but it'll be a good list.
It'll hurt your feelings. Listen, you know what? Actually, my trainer last week, I was not participating in this, but with a group of her students that do like Tuesday night group lessons, she did a horsemanship lesson. So instead of having a ridden lesson, it was like I think some of like her younger kids, and she did like standing wraps and like when to call the vet and like kind of walked them through like what to do if there's a puncture wound and like did a horsemanship lesson. So like there's plenty of things that we can work on when it's hot that may not include riding or drilling.
That was my favorite thing to do. I used to teach, we call them up down lessons for the kids who are starting. Yeah. Baby beginners were my favorite. And if it got really hot out, everybody knew that I was probably going to take 20 minutes of our half an hour lesson to do something like that. How do you put together a bridle? How do you clean a saddle? How do you do a polo wrap? And then we would take a 10-minute walking trail ride because beginners don't need to do that much anyway. And everybody got a lot out of it. So like there's a lot you can do. And I major kudos to your trainer for doing that too with non-beginners because it's definitely worth reinforcing a lot of those basics.
I love it. I think it's fun. And I mean, like I also am the kind of person that when I decide I'm like all into something, I become like a student of that thing. Yes. So like I'm watching YouTube videos and like sometimes of myself like dissecting my ride of like that's where my leg came off around that corner and that's why I took that rail. Like, so there's so much that you can do to improve your riding. And I am also, the queen of like, I try to be so disciplined and I get real disappointed. Like, hey, I was supposed to ride 5 days this week. And there are still things that you can do to better your riding, to better your horse, even if you are in a scenario where it is dangerously hot or the index is too high to safely do what you wanted to do. There's a ton of, in the barn, on the horse, in hand activities that you can do that are still progressing your horsemanship journey, even if that means not riding.
Yeah. And man, we probably could have just, spend oodles of time on that, but there's a lot you can do for yourself, for your barn, for your horse. Sure. If you have questions on any of those kind of things, ask your trainer, ask your barn manager. They will point you in the right direction. Like Ashley does, go down your Google rabbit hole and find, whatever is best in you.
Love a good rabbit hole.
And for anybody who is still riding, just as a reminder, there is no shame in a walk break and walking as much as you can in between things. I know I used to get lovingly reprimanded and it was good. It stuck every time I would be, done with my course and I would pull up and I would stop to chat with my trainer and she'd be like, "What are you doing?"
Oh,
Walk.
yeah.
Movement. And she would remind me to keep moving. And it took a while because I hadn't been taught that before, but it stuck in. So keep your horse walking as much as possible.
Yes.
There are some barns who have, we did not have this, but cooling stations, it's the big fans and they have ice buckets behind it. So it blows out the cool air either in the grooming stall.
That sounds nice.
In the arena. Sounds real nice. So
I wouldn't mind that. I love that.
All for it.
Yeah.
And then you said,
cooling stations at the end of cross-country courses, and that's about it. But I would like to have some in my grooming stalls. I'm going to put that on Damien's to-do list.
Don't tell him this came from me. I do not want.
I won't.
Okay, thank
Lips
you.
are sealed.
Yeah,
Jenna who? I don't even know what you're talking about.
Think about all the marathon runners. There's a lot of great stuff that we're using out there for humans when it's hot and sweaty out. So keeping that in mind. And you've already said it a couple of times, but just as a reminder to really monitor your recovery. And growing up as a 100 jumper early, I didn't have that background, but that is something that if I could have, if I had known about it, I would have definitely incorporated because it makes so much sense to know how your horse recovers so you can baseline monitor when they may not be recovering as well as they could be.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
And so with strategies on what you can do when you're going to ride and with, some bits on what you can do when you don't ride, just, some really quick notes too on when and how you make that decision. And at the end of the day, it's your call. It is your horse. It is your location, your temperature. It's your ride or non-ride. We're definitely not here to tell you what to do. Parasocially, I feel like I know you, but I don't know you well enough to tell you what to do with your horse. So I trust you to make the right decisions as you have been doing with your horse up until this point. But just keeping in mind that while a ride might feel good today, we do have to make choices that really last the span of your horse's long-term health and career, which is hard in the moment when you want to do something, but knowing that that's going to matter in the long run. And knowing that we've already talked about it a little bit, but you have a lot of alternatives. No, they're not as fun as cross-country schooling. They're not as fun as schooling a jump course, but they're still really, really beneficial and they help out more in the long run.
I want to talk about one more thing here too, just on that note, because I would be remiss if I didn't say this. So the other thing to consider too is your horse's job. So if you have a horse that's and you're a serious competitor and you're going to be out doing whatever it is that you're schooling in those conditions, you should train in those conditions. Now, I don't mean to exhaustion or to the point where your horse is in danger, but the worst thing you could possibly do is avoid riding in the heat all summer and then plan to go to Kentucky at AECs and your cross-country time is at 3:45 in the afternoon when the sun is beaming both of you in the face and it's 95 degrees. And then go ask him to run cross country in conditions he's never schooled in. So while you should be cognizant of the conditions that you're riding in and make sure that you're always putting your horse first, I think it is important to help them acclimate to that and make sure that they understand how their body reacts in the heat, that you understand how their body reacts in the heat so that the first time that they're experiencing this is not at a show. And if you're going to have expectations that they are performing in tough conditions, they certainly should be subjected to them in small little bursts, right? So if you're going to ride in the heat at a show, you should school in the heat. And again, not to exhaustion and not to the point where they're in danger, but you certainly remember how we talked about in the spring, the horse, the one person who doesn't ride all winter because it's too cold. And then they have one 60-degree day and they come out and go for a 3-hour trail ride. So that is that's the worst thing you could do is save them all summer. Well, we didn't really ride if it got above 80 degrees because we're both hot. And then you get them to a horse show and you're like, all right, let's go, Fluffy. And he's dying of heat exhaustion on course.
And he is in fact Fluffy and cannot do this.
And he is in fact Fluffy. That's right. So that is something else to consider. And obviously in a situation like this, you work with your trainer, you work with your veterinarian to make sure that you have an appropriate fitness plan and conditioning plan for your horse. Because, I obviously on the pod, we're speaking to people who have backyard pasture pals. We're speaking to people who are weekend warriors and just enjoy it. And then we're speaking to competitors who take it super seriously and, put a second mortgage on their house to pay for their shows. So, for those folks and everyone in between, you just have to make sure that you're preparing your horse for the conditions that they're going to have to face in whatever discipline is that they do. So
I feel it's a good soapbox. I feel like I come at this from the adult Amy perspective all the time. I'm oh man, if it's hard, just don't do it. And it was a good reminder that there's also some very, very strong athletes and competitors out there who don't have the option to just not do it. But on that note, I will say, you saying train for what you're going to show in, 100%.
Totally.
Chefs could not have said it better. But I was never more shocked than when I went from, junior rider to adult rider, and I got moved into adult rider lessons, which was tough, man. The junior to adult swap for 100 jumper rider is not insignificant. But we were going to have a lesson. It was pouring down, just absolutely sheets of rain. And it lightened up in time for our lesson, but it was still raining. And one of the girls is untacking her horse. I look at her, I'm like, wait, what are you doing? Our trainer comes in. She's like, what are you doing? She's like, you need to get out there and ride in the rain. You never ride in the rain. It's going to rain some point this season. It's going to rain some point this season when it's showing. This girl looks at both of us and goes, no, I'm literally not showing in the rain. So why would I ride in the rain? And
listen,
I forgot that was an option in that moment.
If your plan...
But I love that.
If your plan is to scratch based on weather, go for it. But
I remember this. Make sure that you're having fun first and foremost. Two, know what you need and what you don't need. And if you need to get out there and ride in the rain and ride in the heat, because that's what your show summer looks like, do it. And if you don't.
I couldn't agree more. So yes, I will caveat this. If your plan is to scratch, if the conditions are not 75 and sunny, then you do you, boo-boo. That's great. But if your plan is to say I've paid $2,000 to get to this horse show and I want to compete, then you owe it to your horse to give them an opportunity to shine there, right? And the way we don't do that is by not conditioning them all summer and only riding in great conditions. And then it just so happens that we get to the horse show and it's disgusting downpour and the humidity is super high and it's 85 degrees. And you're like, well, I've only ridden, at 5 a.m. when it's nice and cool outside. And so you certainly want to give your horse, I want the benefit of the doubt. It's not what I want to say, but you want to set them up for success. That's what I'm trying to get at. You want to set your horse up for success. The best way that you can do that is train for what you're going to be competing in. And if your choice is to say listen, I start untacking when it starts raining. And if it's 80, I don't step in the barn. That's great. Just you make sure that you're being consistent through your show season.
Yeah. Consistency is always key. And the one thing we haven't touched on that we really should, it won't be long. There's not a lot to say, but the one thing that we really can't control in a lot of ways, we can't control the weather, but we can control what we do with the weather. One thing that we also just have no say in is air quality. And that one from I think a lot for you out in the Midwest, definitely a lot for me in New England, because we've just seen a lot of rolling air quality concerns with wildfires and things like that. And I think this is an even trickier one than heat, because air quality affects so many different people and creatures in so many different ways. I don't tend to notice all the time when we start to get the smoke rolling, but my dad, who has asthma, he's the first to tell you, this isn't great conditions. So, keeping a lot of that in mind, it's very much up to rider and trainer and your guys' comfort level and things like that. The only thing I'm going to give is that there is an air quality index, an AQI, that's used to measure the quality of air. It's a scale from 0 to 500. And it gives you kind of an idea of what this feels like or what this does if you're going to go work in it. And I just, as a quick note, if you reference the AQI at any point, which I do recommend doing if you know that you have air quality concerns in your area, 0 to 50, fine, do everything you're normally doing. 50 to 100 is also fine. Just make sure that you're keeping an eye if your horse does have something like, a respiratory condition, or if you have a respiratory condition, things like that. 100 to 150 is unhealthy. 150 to 200 is unhealthy. 200 to 300, very unhealthy. These are all areas where you need to really be closely monitoring and making sure that you are doing what you are comfortable with and what your horse is capable of. But then over 300, that one's a pretty clear, that's a no. So from me personally, I can't tell you what to do, but reference that along with the temperature, heat index, the AQI, the THI, and just be aware of what's out there and what's happening. Only you know what is the right, ride and level for you and your horse, but it's worth mentioning when we do have a lot of that through, I think, all over the country.
I will say that I think that Yusuf makes a recommendation.
Oh, do they?
I think they do. I don't think that it's a requirement that when the AQI is over 150, that show secretaries or show organizations should consider. It's their choice, but consider pushing it off or canceling the show.
Yes.
And I know that in our area last week, we had very bad. In some parts of Chicagoland, it was like upwards of 500-600. Like it was very bad.
Ooh.
And our local show, our Chicago Hits at Lamplight, canceled both Thursday and Friday. They ended up running Saturday because the AQI had come down. And then I was at a show that weekend. I ultimately ended up scratching. So did like half the show. So a lot of people made that decision, even after the AQI came back down, just to give their horses a little bit of breathing room, pun intended, but just to give them an opportunity. I actually, I wear contact lenses, and the second the smoke moved in, I could feel it in my eyeballs.
Ooh.
I didn't feel it from a respiratory perspective, but I could feel it in my eyes. And then, the horses, everyone has a different, obviously, but I could tell, with Andy, a little bit lethargic. He started to get a little snotty nose, I think, trying to clear all the particulate.
Yeah.
And what I'll also mention is that the scale that you mentioned is not just an arbitrary scale. So kind of how the heat index was humidity plus heat in Fahrenheit, and that's how we get to that index. This is measuring various different pollutants like carbon monoxide and then particulate matter that actually that you would breathe in. So it's giving you a range of these specific, and you can look up the parameters. So it's particulates and different airborne carcinogens, and they're giving you
you're
a
generally
level.
not trying to breathe in.
You're generally trying to not breathe those in. That would be a super ideal situation. Yes. So this is something that you certainly want to work with your vet on, because every horse is going to have a different scenario. The people who are near these wildfires and they just live this California and Canada right now, you can't escape it. So, there are certainly going to be tips and tricks that those veterinarians are going to be able to help you with that we probably can't help you through. But thankfully, the air is clear here in Chicago again. And
yeah, it's beautiful and blue out today as well. So we're grateful for that. And also, just to confirm, I looked up while you were saying it. Yes, USDF, United States Equestrian Federation, for anyone who's not a part of it, has an actual, note that if it's above 150, the unhealthy threshold, they recommend not show. So again, personal experience, personal preference. Like you said, California and Canada experience things very differently than we do, but it's worth keeping in mind, worth keeping an eye out for.
Yeah.
It's not heat related so much, which is why I'm kind of shoehorning it in. But they all do go hand in hand a lot of the time. They do.
And I think you put it so well just a couple minutes ago. We cannot control the weather. We can't control the heat or the humidity or the air condition. All that we can control is how we react to it and what we ask our horses to do in those scenarios. And so that's really all that you can do for your horse is react and have a plan for how you're going to react, work with your care team for how you're going to react, write it down, commit it to memory, talk to your vet, talk to your trainer and say, hey, what was that?
Keep a note in your phone.
Keep a note in your phone. That's right. Post it on your forehead. However you remember. Make sure you have a plan for these situations. It's likely that at some point in time, you're definitely going to encounter the heat, I guess, regardless of where you are geographically. And the air quality thing has been, with these Canadian wildfires has been so top of mind. So yeah, have a plan in place. Practice, know how to read respiration on your horses, know how to take their heart rate, know how to take a rectal temperature so that if and when you're in one of these scenarios, you can gather the data to know if your horse is okay or not.
Yeah. And hey, if you're not sure how to do any of those things, one, no shame. There's no better time to learn than literally right now. Next time it's hot, also ask your trainer if you can do a horsemanship lesson. Walk through the barn.
That's right. That's right.
Always
I'm sure your trainer will be very happy for that.
Honestly, they'd probably be stoked. And if not, schedule time with a barn manager or somebody else that you know that does a really great job. Your vet, maybe even just to learn to be able to have that kind of knowledge and experience on hand is always a good idea.
I love it.
And I think I always try to end it with if I've learned something or what my key takeaway is. And this one's not great. I've been rattling around in my brain here for the last few minutes, but we started this episode out, with the question is, what is too hot to ride? And my key takeaway is, it is and it isn't. This is Schrodinger's temperature, right? It's both too hot at any given point. So this episode, more than, even the last couple that we've done, is really just know your horse, know your location, know your fitness, just know your horse and your situation. And I would also recommend definitely listening to the last 3, electrolytes, UV protection, sweating anhydrosis, that they all definitely come into play with all of this, because the question of when is it too hot to ride does not have and will never have a singular answer.
That's right. I totally agree. I love Schrodinger's temperature. I'm using that forever. That's fantastic. I totally agree on all points. No notes.
All right. Then I think I think that actually wraps up our 4-part Beat the Heat series. If you guys have listened or watched all 4 of these episodes, shout out to you. Thanks for sticking with us. It was just too much to put into one episode, and I only have an attention span. I mean, I can yap for years, but for listening to our attention span for so long, so didn't want to put you guys into, oh my gosh, why are Jen and Ashley talking to us for 2 hours? So hopefully this felt more palatable and enjoyable, and we'll try to break some other things up into multi-part series when it's applicable as well. Because hopefully for you guys this was fun, but this was definitely fun for me.
Okay, this is unrelated. Well, kind of. I mean, it's. I'm just accepting that if the 4-part Beat the Heat series has come to an end, that like summer is coming to an end.
No, oh my God, how dare you? No.
I'm sorry. I'm just not ready for the goal.
It's July 30th. Don't do this to me.
I'm just not ready. I know. But like as soon August 1, you're going to walk into Target and it's spooky season. So I'm just.
To be fair,
it's
I will
fine.
fight Target on that. And I think we should be allowed to enjoy a singular season.
I agree. At least until Labor Day. That's right.
A pumpkin spice latte until at least September. And even then, hopefully for the rest of you guys, it's similar. But like summer for us continues usually through the end of September. So
yes, I at least get into October.
Yeah. So
okay. All right. You're right. We've got time.
All right, well, that horrible last note that summer is continuing forever. Thank you, Ashley. And that's going to wrap us. So as a reminder, you can find links to today's products in your show notes on your podcast player or on our website at www.smartpakequine.com/blog.
And we are here twice a month on the 15th and 30th. But in between, you can find us on Instagram or Facebook as SmartPak, or you can shop online at smartpakequine.com. Until next time, stay smart, stay cool,
and give your horse a cookie from us.